And I read something you said, and I was like, "Oh my God, I get this guy." And I love what you were saying. You're saying the one thing that really gets your blood boiling is when they try to return our rights to us under the following three conditions. You know, it's like they kidnap your kid and they say, "I will do you the favor of returning your child to you if you do the following three things." And then, you know, if you do the following three things, maybe you'll get your kid, maybe you won't. But if they give your kid back to you, you're supposed to say, "Thank you so much, benevolent leader."
Yeah, it's like no one thinks anymore in a serious way about what the role of government ought to be and what the nature of rights ought to be. And the idea that the government can just kind of do what they decide they want to and then reward you with these rights, treating them as if these are like state granted privileges, is appalling to me. And I remember when Governor Murphy in New Jersey said on Tucker Carlson's show back in, I think it was in May of 2020, when he asked him, well, where do you get the authority? He had arrested people for going to synagogue. He goes, well, where do you get the authority? This is clearly a constitutionally protected right.
He said, who gave you the authority to suspend the Bill of Rights?
Yeah. And he said, well, I wasn't thinking about the Bill of Rights.
He said it was above my pay grade. Yeah, it's above my pay grade. Well, then don't touch it. Then it's above your pay grade to try to undo it.
Yeah, no, it's actually exactly your pay grade. This is quite literally what you're paid for is to run a state government. And it's people you do not have the right to do this. And the idea of rights is a moral construct. It's not. Nobody's ever argued that governments are incapable of violating people's rights. But the idea is that you morally are not permitted to do that. And man, if this country is going to survive this whole thing, we really need to get back that idea, which is a big part of why this country was so successful ever.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I was just looking up the exact quote, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. And Tucker did a great job of that guy. The other night he had a SOT montage where you sort of go through and pick sound bites and put them together of all the craziness that happened during the pandemic with people, just cracking down, like arresting the paddleboarder in the middle of the ocean. He was alone by himself. I think it was in California, they arrested this guy. But yeah, to your point, what did our founders say? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, these governors, and even worse than the governors, it's like these little bureaucrats below them, or Fauci, or Rochelle Walensky, who's never been elected to do anything, started taking them away. And now that they're finally being forced because of the politics, now they want to claim the science has changed. It hasn't. The politics have changed. Now they want us to pat them on the back for returning our unalienable rights to us. Right? It's like the victory lap being taken by these Democrats. Like, you're welcome. Like Hakeem Jeffries earlier this week. Biden crushed the virus. No, he did. Who do you think you're kidding?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fact is that while you see like the entire corporate press kind of freaking out about misinformation, disinformation online, what they just refuse to do is have an ounce of introspection and ask themselves, well, why is it that trust in institutions all throughout this country have completely crumbled? And the corporate press is one of the biggest ones that has, trust in media, the numbers of people who are actually even listening or subscribing to newspapers or watching cable news has plummeted. And this is because it's not just that they're wrong about everything, but they're so dishonest and there's no sense of admitting it. So if you look at the lockdowns, the original lockdowns, which in my opinion were like one of the greatest crimes perpetrated on the American people by their governments. This Johns Hopkins study comes out, it pretty clearly demonstrates they had no measurable effect. They destroyed lives. And not just the people who died as a result of them. The hundreds of thousands of small businesses, the children who's, have been completely stunted in their development, childhood obesity up something like 50%. That you would think in a sane society that the people who pushed for those lockdowns and implemented them, at the very least, should never be near public policy again. And they should at least have to admit, man, we got the biggest thing ever wrong. But there's none of that. It's just got like, oh, the science has changed. But no, we're talking about what the science was back then, while people who were against the lockdowns were completely demonized.
That's right. That's right. And people who took to the streets to try to make a point about it were demonized, whereas then the Black Lives Matter protesters came out and they were celebrated. And that same thing, leads me to what's happening in Canada, because you mentioned the class issue here. The working class, the Democrats used to be the party of the working class. They're clearly not anymore. They're losing working class voters by the boatload. Trump was picking them up. The Republicans continue to pick them up. The Democrats are the party of the elites now, the college educated elites, or at least the ones who don't really give two shits about the working class. And it's kind of manifesting in like a microcosm up in Canada, which I basically consider you a Canadian because I know you went to college in Oneonta, right? So it's like, yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah, right. I guess that's true. The winters felt pretty Canadian.
They're terrible. I mean, I went to Syracuse I went to Syracuse for college and lived up there too. So we're basically Canadian. We can speak to this. But what's happening up there is really extraordinary, right? Like the dam burst. The Canadians took it. Unlike here, there wasn't as much pushback. Even their conservative leaders kind of abandoned them and shut up and enforced all this nonsense. And it took the working class truckers to say, F this. We're just not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, well, I think also it's probably a combination of that and also that they were pushed a bit further than the Americans were. So you kind of wonder where people's breaking points are. And it seems constantly like the kind of ruling elite is flirting with that. Like, how far can we push you? What if we destroy your business? What if we say we're going to propagandize your children to hate you? Is that, like how far before you finally snap and are like, well, no, we're doing something about this. And then, of course, they'll call you a terrorist or a racist or whatever the name is. But one of the things that's really interesting about this mass trucker protest and other protesting as well, but specifically with the truckers, is that it's very easy for, like, I was talking before about kind of the elitism in these like wealthy liberal areas. It's very easy for people in today's day and age to be disconnected from how much they sit on top of the work that blue collar workers do. And by the way, I'm including myself in this. I'm not like saying like, I'm sitting here in like, in my office, in my home, there's heat, there's electricity, there's an internet connection. There's all of these things that blue collar workers worked very hard to provide for me. And I just get them and I don't have to think about it that much. And that's true for all of us. And we're very disconnected from how powerful truckers are. Our society still runs on truckers getting things from point A to point B, and things all fall apart very quickly without them. So it is truly like a kind of reclaiming of power that the working class has that they have not exercised for a very long time. And as you pointed out with Donald Trump carrying the working class vote, that in itself should have been something to really open people's eyes in America. But of course, no one wanted to examine that. But the working class in this country and many others across the Western world has been screwed over for decades. And this now, over the last couple of years, they have absolutely just been decimated. And so I love it. I think it's wonderful to see them standing up.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.